Hi, I'm Eliza. While I was living abroad, my sister sold off our family home, drained the account in my name, and erased me from the will. My parents, they watched in silence like I never existed. But when I came back, I didn't just want answers. I wanted accountability. Want to know what I did when I found the forged deed and her confession. Before we dive in, let us know. What time are you listening to this and where are you? Drop a comment. We'd love to hear from you. I didn't sleep that night, not even a minute. I lay in the guest room, if I could still call it that, watching the ceiling fan spin slow and steady like it had no idea the ground under this family was shifting. The walls hadn't changed. Same wallpaper from my grandmother's era. Same drawer knobs I helped paint when I was 12. And yet, everything felt foreign, like I'd been dropped into a carefully reconstructed replica of my life. Except in this version, I didn't exist. Around 5 in the morning, I sat up, my hair tangled, mouth dry. I dressed quietly, pulled on the same jeans from the day before, and crept down the hallway like a guest overstaying her welcome. No one else was awake yet, or maybe they were pretending not to be. I grabbed my keys off the hook, the only thing still hanging where it always had, and slipped outside into the morning haze. The dew on the lawn chilled my ankles through thin socks. I sat in my car for a while, gripping the steering wheel with both hands, trying to ground myself in something I still owned. I didn't drive right away. I needed a destination first, somewhere that didn't smell like decaying memories. Then I remembered the Buncombe County Clerk's office. If I was really erased, I needed to see it with my own eyes. It opened at 8. I killed time with a dismal cup of diner coffee and a parking lot full of retirees waiting for the Social Security office next door. When the clock struck 7:58, I got in line, folder clutched in hand like it contained something more than my shattered sense of belonging. Inside, the tile floors echoed under every step. The clerk behind the plexiglass barrier barely looked up when I slid over my request. "I'm looking for the title record on 921 Eastfield," I said, voice taut. She typed. Her long nails clicked fast against the keyboard. Then she frowned. "You're not listed as an owner," she said. "It's under Lila and Carter, sole holder. Last update was 14 months ago." My ears rang. I blinked slowly, processing the words like a foreign language. "Is there any indication why I'm not included?" I asked. "It was supposed to be shared inheritance." The clerk tilted her head. "You'd have to check with whoever filed the change. We just show who's on the deed. Do you have a copy of that form?" She gave me a cautious look, then printed the sheet. My hands shook as I took it. The signature. It was a version of mine, but off. The loops were too rigid. The E in Eliza curved the wrong way. I'd know it anywhere. I stepped out into the parking lot trying to breathe. She forged it. Lila forged my signature. Not just a grab for money. She rewrote legal history to make it seem like I'd willingly walked away. And the worst part, my parents didn't say a word. I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen, debating who to call. My first instinct was Mom. But then I remembered the way she'd looked past me last night, like I was something she didn't quite remember requesting. So I texted Marcus instead. Just 5 words. She forged my name. "Help." He called within seconds. "Where are you?" he asked. I told him. "I need everything," he said. "Deed, signature, date of transfer, and if you can get your passport records, I'll start pulling state records on my end." "I'm on it," I said. There was silence for a moment. Then he added, "Eliza, we might be looking at criminal territory here, not just inheritance disputes. If she forged your name on a property title, especially involving a state law, it's serious." "I know," I whispered. "That's why I'm not running this time." I drove home, if I could still call it that, heart pounding. When I stepped inside, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Lila was in the kitchen flipping through a stack of mail. "You're up early," she said without turning around. "I went to the clerk's office," I replied. "Interesting paperwork filed on the house." She stiffened, just barely. "We've been over this." "No," I cut her off. "You've talked. I've been erased. That's not the same as over." Her eyes met mine now. Cool, piercing. "Eliza, you weren't here. You left. You went off to Europe and stopped checking in. We made decisions. You forged my name," I said. She smiled thinly, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Can you prove that?" I looked at her for a long time, seeing past the veneers and the casual cruelty. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I can." She flinched. Just a flicker. But I saw it. Then she turned away, dismissing me like a waitress who'd brought the wrong order. "We'll talk later," she said. "No," I replied, voice steady. "We'll talk again when I bring a lawyer." I went back to my old room and shut the door. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I opened my laptop, pulled up a folder labeled Prague Travel, and started piecing together my alibi. It was strange realizing your own family had plotted your removal like a quiet political coup. No guns, no blood, just ink and silence. But they made one mistake. They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought I wouldn't fight. I didn't sleep. And by morning, I'd already booked an appointment at the county clerk's office. The woman behind the glass looked up and said, "You're not on the ownership record anymore." I didn't answer writing and editing tips for fiction writers. Answer right away. My throat had gone dry. Not because I didn't expect the words, but because hearing them made it all too real. I leaned against the counter, steadying my hands as I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, pretending the gesture could hold me together. The clerk, a woman maybe in her 60s, gave me a sympathetic look, the kind you reserve for people whose bad day has nothing to do with traffic or a spilled coffee. "Is there anything else I can help you with?" she asked gently. "Can I see the title transfer history?" I said, trying to sound composed. She typed something into the computer, clicked, then slid a printed page under the glass. "This is what's on file. It was updated over a year ago." I scanned the sheet. Lila's name was listed alone. My own was gone, deleted like an old email. At the bottom was a scribbled signature. Mine, or something close enough to pass if no one was paying attention. The clerk leaned in. "You might want to talk to a lawyer, sweetheart, especially if you didn't sign that." I nodded, mouth tight. "Yeah, that's the next stop." Back in the parking lot, I climbed into my car and just sat there. My hands trembled around the steering wheel. I wasn't angry yet. I was something colder, a stillness just before the pressure hits the breaking point. My phone buzzed in my lap. Unknown sender. Check 921 Eastfield Road on Haven Properties. The listing's been up for 3 days. Ask yourself why. My heart stalled, then kicked up with sharp precision. I clicked the link. The listing was right there in bold font. Charming family estate, motivated seller. A slideshow began autoplaying. My grandparents' living room, polished and staged. The fireplace, where we opened Christmas gifts, now had a designer plant in its place. My bedroom, the one with the window seat, was labeled as a cozy reading nook. Lila hadn't repurposed my childhood like a product on a shelf. The listing agent's contact was at the bottom. I didn't hesitate. I hit call. "Hello. This is Greg from Haven Properties." A chipper voice answered. "Hi," I said, adjusting my tone. I saw the listing for 921 Eastfield and was wondering if it's still available. Yes, just hit the market. Beautiful place. It's been in the same family for generations, but the current owner is moving out of state. And the title's clean?" I asked, careful not to let my voice crack. "Clean as it gets. We've already run all the title work. No liens, no secondary claims. Should close fast. Would you like to schedule a showing?" "No, thank you," I said, and hung up before I could say something reckless. I sat in silence, letting that last phrase ring. Clean as it gets. Marcus. I had to call Marcus. Instead, I texted, "Found a listing. This happening behind my back," confirming full title under her name. My screen lit up within seconds. "Marcus, send me everything. I'll check the transfer docs. There may be forgery." I forwarded the email, the title document, and a screenshot of the listing. My fingers moved faster than my thoughts. I wasn't spiraling. I was collecting ammo. That night, after dinner that I barely touched, and a house full of people who refused to acknowledge the quiet storm gathering in the corner, I grabbed my coat and keys again. No one asked where I was going. Driving past the house felt like slipping into someone else's dream. Lila's car was in the driveway, and through the window, I saw her, glass of wine in hand, laughing with someone. She looked free, effortless, like betrayal was just another Tuesday. I didn't knock. Instead, I pulled away, turning off the main road toward the only person who still remembered who I was before all of this. Not the dutiful daughter, not the distant sister, the woman who learned to build firewalls digitally and emotionally, and who knew when to stop being polite. I didn't have a plan yet, but I had a name. I had a trail. And now I had proof. They wanted to erase me quietly, but I wasn't going quietly anymore. "I'm coming to see you," I texted Marcus. "And this time I'm bringing everything. Marcus met me at his downtown office holding 2 coffees and a file that already had my name on it. He didn't ask how I'd slept because he knew the answer. He just nodded toward the chair across from his desk, handed me the coffee, and opened the file. There was a formal renunciation of claim filed 13 months ago, he said, signed in your name, notarized in Asheville. I took the page slowly, reading it like I was staring at a stranger's confession. Everything looked neat, official, proper. I didn't sign this, I said flatly. I was in Switzerland that month. Marcus nodded, flipping to the next sheet. The notary listed as real, but if you didn't sign it, we're looking at forgery. I can subpoena the notary's book and signature log. She forged this, I whispered. She didn't just want my part. She wanted the records to show I gave it away. The betrayal settled differently now, less like a punch, more like a cold wind settling into my spine. Later that evening, after hours of reviewing documents, I sat on the couch in my Airbnb with my laptop in my lap, trying to distract myself, but distraction didn't work. My hand wandered to Facebook. There, in a local community thread, was my name. Eliza left the country years ago. She cut everyone off. Pretty sure she told her mom she didn't even want the house. Well, Lila's been the one holding things down. Of course, they left it to her. My heart pounded. I scrolled through more posts, comments, replies. It wasn't just gossip. It was deliberate, controlled, like someone had planted half-truths and let them grow in the cracks of silence. I messaged my mother. Did you tell people I walked away from the inheritance? She didn't reply immediately. I stared at the screen, willing it to light up. An hour passed, then 2. Finally, her reply came in a single line. You weren't here, sweetie. That's what people assumed. Lila just explained things. Explained. That word burned more than anything else. I didn't expect her to lie for me, but she let others build a lie around my absence and never corrected it. The next morning, I called her. She answered on the 3rd ring. Hello, it's me, I said. Oh, hi, honey. Her voice was soft but careful, like she didn't know which version of me was calling, the daughter or the problem. I need to ask you something, I said. Why didn't you tell me what was going on with the house, with the will? Why didn't you ask me before removing my name? She paused, then said gently, I thought Lila was keeping you in the loop. She said she'd emailed. She didn't. A long pause stretched over the line like a crack widening. We didn't want conflict. You've been gone for so long. And Lila, she handled it all. Your father and I, we just didn't want drama. Drama? My voice sharpened. You know what I mean? She replied quickly. You've always been more independent, Lila. She stays close. That one sentence told me everything. They didn't choose her because she was right. They chose her because she was there. That evening, I needed to clear my head. So I walked to the little cafe on the corner, ordered tea I wouldn't drink, and sat by the window. I had barely stepped out when I saw them. My father and Lila walking along the sidewalk, laughing, carrying a shopping bag. I didn't call out. I didn't move. I watched them pass. My body rooted in place like something invisible held me still. They looked like a holiday card. A father and daughter so comfortable in their rhythm. You'd never guess someone was missing from the picture. And that was the cruelest part. I hadn't been forgotten. I had been rewritten. Later that night, I opened my laptop again, reviewed the paperwork, and highlighted every inconsistency. The forged date, the notary signature location, the mismatch in initials. I opened a clean sheet of paper and wrote out my list. Notary log subpoena, passport stamp from Prague, witness from my old job abroad, screenshot every rumor thread, collect digital evidence of listing edits. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was preparing because if they thought I'd vanish quietly, they had no idea who they'd trained me to become. This ends now, I said aloud to no one but also to everyone. Marcus's voice sharpened through the line. The notary in the file, she notarized 4 documents that same week. One of them was a medical directive signed by your mom. I stood up from the bench outside the courthouse, breath caught somewhere between my chest and throat. That was when she had the fall, I said. She was in and out of rehab. Marcus continued. Exactly the same week she supposedly signed over the inheritance. My mind raced back to that winter. My mother had slipped on ice outside the grocery store, hit her head on the curb. She called me 2 days after, confused and emotional. She thought I was still in college. I had to remind her I was calling from Switzerland, not from the apartment on Greenleaf Street. She wasn't all there, I said, barely recognizing my own voice. That's what worries me. He said, a notary can't certify a signature if the signer isn't lucid. If we can prove mental incompetence, this goes way beyond civil fraud. The next morning, I drove to the small rehab center just outside Asheville, Myrtle Pines Recovery. The nurse at the front desk looked uneasy when I asked for records, but softened when I mentioned I was her daughter. Off the record? She whispered, glancing down the hallway. Your mom wasn't making any legal decisions that week. She was forgetting names, confusing years. I had to remind her daily why she was even here. She handed me a copy of the patient file. Notes scribbled by the on-duty therapist, and right there in black ink, patient disoriented. Appears unaware of time and place. Next to that was a signature on a legal release with a notary stamp. No witness, no doctor's sign-off, no social worker present. She signed something, I murmured, flipping through the pages, but she didn't know what she was signing. That night, back in Raleigh, Marcus leaned over the evidence sprawled across his conference table. This isn't just unethical, he said. It's possible coercion, maybe elder abuse. I nodded slowly. Lila handed her a pen while she was half-conscious, and Mom trusted her enough to hold it. There was grief in that, not just for what was taken, but for who they used to do it. 2 days later, we followed the paper trail to a different battleground, the bank. We entered the same branch where my parents had managed their joint account since I was 18. The marble floors and soft jazz felt almost cruel now. A polite, nervous teller brought up archived records while Marcus showed our authorization forms, and then she froze. There's a transaction from early March last year, she said. A wire for $45,000. She turned the screen toward us. The authorization form was signed Eliza Carter. I stared at it, neat cursive, off just enough that I knew it wasn't mine. I was out of the country, I said. I can get the passport stamp and flight logs. Marcus looked at me quietly for a second, then turned to the teller. We'll need a certified copy of this and the camera footage from that transaction day if it still exists. They forged your signature to clean out your portion, he said to me as we walked out. This isn't a mistake. This was a strategy. I didn't respond. There wasn't space in my chest for words. Back at the house that night, I stood in the guest room, my old room, my eyes catching the cracks in the ceiling I once used to count before falling asleep as a kid. I looked at myself in the mirror. No tears came, just a sharpness behind my ribs that wouldn't ease. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth, and I wanted it documented. I opened my laptop and logged into the security system I had set up for my parents' home back when they complained about prowlers and porch pirates. They never bothered changing the credentials. After I left, the screen blinked to life. The kitchen came into view, light streaming through the blinds, and in the middle of the frame, Lila. She was gesturing at the ceiling, pointing toward the hallway. A man I didn't recognize stood beside her, nodding, taking notes. My mouth went dry. She was giving a tour like it was already hers. I leaned forward, recording the feed with my phone just in case. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This was proof. I opened the live feed. Lila was in the kitchen, pointing at the ceiling, giving a tour to a man I didn't recognize. I leaned closer to the screen, turning the volume up just enough to catch the cadence in Lila's voice. Calm, cheerful, too rehearsed. The title's clean, she said, walking ahead of the man with the clipboard. I have full authority. My mother signed power of attorney over to me before her condition worsened. I paused the feed. She was lying effortlessly. The power of attorney had been revoked months ago. My mother had signed the revocation form herself. I had helped her submit it digitally to the state while on a Zoom call from Prague. Lila knew that, but she was betting no one else would dig deep enough to check. I called Marcus immediately. She's using a voided POA. I told him she's doubling down. He replied, that's document fraud. If she presents it to a buyer or title company, that's misrepresentation. And if she tries to close with it, she's cornering herself legally. I stared at the paused image of my sister gesturing toward the skylight I'd once helped install. She's selling the only place that still remembers who I was, I said. Later that afternoon, while compiling screenshots of the live feed for Marcus's records, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from a name I hadn't seen in years. Mrs. Harper. She lived next door to us since before I was born. Always polite, always watching. She once knew every detail of our birthdays, where we were headed for college, who we were dating. The message was short. You should see this. I recorded it 2 weeks ago. I didn't know who else to send it to. There was an attachment, a video clip. I tapped it open. The view was from her back porch, angled across the fence into ours. Lila stood at the edge of the deck, towering over our mother, who was seated, clutching the armrest of the porch swing. "Don't say anything to Eliza," Lila snapped. "Do you want to lose this house, too?" Mom flinched, turning her face away. I watched it again and again, and then I muted the video, but the rage didn't fade. It hummed underneath my ribs, dull and deadly. The silence in our family hadn't just been passive. It was manufactured, enforced, controlled. This wasn't tension anymore. It was intimidation. That night, I called my father. I didn't rehearse what I was going to say. I let the weight of the facts do the speaking. "Dad," I began. "I saw the footage. I know what she's doing, and I know you've let her." He didn't answer right away. I could hear the creak of his chair, the flick of his lighter. He always smoked on the porch when he was avoiding the truth. "You should talk to your sister about this," he said finally. "We don't want trouble." The words hit like cold water. "You already have it," I said. A pause. "She's your sister, Eliza." "No," I said. "She's your liability and mine, too, until now." I hung up, opened my laptop, and drafted an email to Marcus. "We go public, file the injunction, start the process." I reread it once, then hit send. The next day, as the sun began to fall behind the Blue Ridge horizon, I drove to the edge of Eastfield Road and parked across from the house. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. I waited. About 20 minutes later, the front door swung open. Lila walked out with the man from the video feed, clipboard still in hand. They were laughing again, almost too hard, like they knew someone was watching and wanted to perform normalcy. I stepped out of my car. Lila noticed me first. Her laugh faltered. "If you go through with this," I said calmly, "I'll take everything you value. Not just the house, your name, your narrative, your future." She tilted her head. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you," I replied. "There's a difference, and I have evidence to back every word." The man beside her shifted uncomfortably, glancing between us. Lila smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I don't scare that easy." "You should," I said. "You're not lying to a family member anymore. You're lying to the law." I turned and walked back to my car. The only sound was my heels against the pavement and the high-pitched whine of the engine starting. They'd drawn first blood, but I was done bleeding. The next morning, I walked into the bank with a folder and a subpoena. The branch manager didn't even try to hide the panic in his face as he stared at the document I slid across his polished desk. I watched his eyes skim the forged transfer slip bearing my signature, my full legal name written in someone else's handwriting. "I'll need a moment to verify this," he said, his voice losing its usual banker confidence. "You'll find a loan issued for $38,000, I said calmly. It was secured using my name and social security number. The address listed as 921 Eastfield. His lips pressed together. He tapped at his keyboard, glanced between screens, then pulled up the exact record. He exhaled through his nose. "It's there," he said quietly. "Auto loan issued March last year. Cleared in one day." Marcus, seated beside me, leaned in. "Eliza was in Prague. We have passport stamps, employment logs, flight itineraries. That's not just suspicious, that's fraud." The manager nodded, visibly sweating now. "Would you like us to launch an internal inquiry?" "We'd like a full printout of all transactions linked to that loan," Marcus said. "And the original application, also security footage, if you still have it." "Of course," the man replied. "I'll put the request in now." I folded my hands in my lap. They hadn't just tried to take the house. They had borrowed against my identity, my future, as if I was nothing but paperwork they could shuffle to fund their version of the truth. That night, back at the rental, I sat at the edge of the bed and opened my laptop. I uploaded all the security footage from the house to 3 separate cloud drives, 2 personal, 1 legal. Then I watched the clips again, not out of masochism, but to make sure I didn't miss anything. Lila gave a full tour of the home. Living room, kitchen, my old bedroom. "This is the house I grew up in," she told the buyer, voice full of warmth I hadn't heard in years. "It's mine now. I've handled all the legal stuff." Another clip showed Nathan, her husband, in the driveway speaking with a second man in business casual, pointing to the gutters and garage door. I zoomed in on the timestamp. It was the same week she claimed nothing was happening with the property. I downloaded every frame. Marcus's reply came within minutes of me forwarding the folder. Got it. Building the case now. Property misrepresentation, POA misuse, identity theft, financial fraud. I didn't smile. I just finally felt functional again. The following morning, we walked into the county clerk's office. Marcus wore his courtroom face, and I wore mine, the one I'd sharpened during years in tech presentations in front of skeptical all-male teams. We submitted the injunction paperwork to halt any sale of the Eastfield property. We froze related bank accounts under investigation. The clerk stamped everything, glanced at me briefly, then gave a small nod. On the way out, Marcus turned to me. They're going to push hard. They'll paint you as bitter, vindictive. You sure you're ready for that? I didn't hesitate. They've had years to build a lie. I've had a week, and it's already crumbling. He smiled. Let's finish the job. That evening, I was going through my notes when my phone buzzed. Lila. I didn't answer, but I read the text. What the hell are you doing? The bank called. Why are you trying to destroy everything? I stared at the screen. My fingers moved before I even realized I was typing. You shouldn't have forged my name. I pressed send. She didn't reply, and I didn't need her to. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't even personal anymore. This was simple arithmetic. They had subtracted me from the will, the house, the family narrative. But I had receipts now, and I wasn't just adding myself back. I was taking back what they tried to steal. The next morning, I filed the fraud report and subpoenaed Lila's full communication history. Marcus looked up from his laptop and said, "You're going to want to see what we just pulled from her email archive." I stepped into the room. His screen was already turned toward me. He tapped one file open, a forwarded message from Nathan, dated 9 months ago. If she shows up, we'll say she walked away. No court will care if it's all cleaned up by then. Below it, another email. This one from Lila to an old friend who worked in HR at a global tech company I had once interned for in Boston. Do you still have access to travel and visa logs? I just need to confirm my sister's overseas status. Long story, family stuff just covering all angles. I read it twice, then again. The implication landed hard but cold. This wasn't sloppiness. This wasn't desperation. This was rehearsed. Marcus leaned back. They mapped this out. A full timeline, signatures, witnesses, storylines. This isn't just fraud, it's conspiracy. I nodded, but my face didn't move. Inside, something had split wide open. Not grief, not fury, precision. 2 days later, we stood inside a modest courtroom in Buncombe County. The judge had granted an emergency injunction hearing after our petition passed preliminary review. We had one chance to put everything on record. Marcus presented the paperwork first. Clear, undeniable copies of the forged loan, the false power of attorney, the bogus withdrawal documents. Then he connected them with the footage. Lila laughing through tours of the house, Nathan checking gutters, the recorded audio of her coercing our mother into silence, and finally the emails laid bare, labeled chronological, a digital blueprint of intent to defraud. Lila sat across the aisle in a stiff blazer she wouldn't normally wear. Her expression molded into innocence, but her shoulders were tense. Her lips stayed pressed in a smile that didn't fit. The judge looked at her. Miss Carter, do you dispute that these communications were sent from your personal account? Lila cleared her throat. I was just trying to make sure everything stayed orderly. She was gone. She left the country. We thought she didn't care anymore. That was when I stood up. No raised voice, just my voice. I was living abroad, not abandoned. I sent holiday messages. I called. I still paid property taxes with my name on the file. Lila opened her mouth, but the judge raised his hand. I looked around the room. My mother was sitting in the second row, hands clutched around a wad of tissues. My father hadn't shown. I breathed out. Distance isn't absence. Silence isn't consent, and family doesn't mean you get to write me out of my own story. A stillness swept the courtroom. Even the clerk looked up. For the first time, I whispered. They couldn't talk over me because now the evidence speaks louder. When the judge ruled to freeze all sales, launch a forensic audit into every transaction tied to the estate, and reopen the inheritance claim under suspicion of collusion, I didn't cheer. I just sat down. Behind me, I heard it. A soft sob. My mother. I didn't turn around. The pain wasn't from winning or losing. It was from realizing how deep silence can cut when it comes from the people who once kissed your scraped knees and packed your school lunches. Lila turned around once before the bailiff signaled for her to leave. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked terrified. She'd spent so long orchestrating the lie. She never thought it would turn back on her like a mirror. When the lies collapsed, the silence cracked, too, and the only thing louder than the truth was what it cost to speak it. Outside, a reporter from the Asheville Register was waiting. He had a notepad, old school, and a windbreaker that said press in peeling white letters. "Miss Carter," he said gently, "any statement about the proceedings today?" I didn't answer right away. The air was cool, the kind that makes you suddenly remember where you are. Finally, I said what happened wasn't just legal. It was personal. That's the problem with family fraud. People think it's okay because it's blood. He nodded, scribbled something down. I added, they used my last name to erase me. I used their lies to make them visible. And then I walked away. No shaking hands, no looking back. The judge gave us 7 days to present the full forensic audit. Marcus said, we just found something else. A second mortgage appeared, one I never signed, and the buyer was listed as a company tied to Nathan. Marcus's jaw clenched as he spun his laptop around for me to see. It's not even subtle. The shell company was incorporated by a guy named Evan Tate, Nathan's business partner. I scanned the documents, the signatures, the addresses, the bank routing info, all built on top of my identity. It's under your maiden name, Marcus added. But the intent is clear. They used your name to leverage equity they never had rights to. That's not just theft. That's laundering. He didn't need to say anything else. It clicked in one sweep. They weren't trying to preserve the house. They were trying to flip it into cash. Scrubbed clean of me, erased for profit. And they nearly got away with it. We drafted the settlement terms that afternoon. I wanted the terms clean. No poetic justice, just legal, inarguable justice. Lila would forfeit all claims to the estate. Nathan would be reported to the state fraud board and disqualified from holding financial licenses. Lila would sign a notarized statement confessing to the forgeries, the misuse of power of attorney, and her coordinated plan with Nathan. In exchange, I wouldn't press criminal charges that could land her behind bars. At first, she refused, predictable. She called me vindictive, said I never wanted the house anyway, and that this was just about ego. But that was before Marcus sent her the full audit, before she saw the camera angles from the porch, before the court transcripts landed in her inbox, before the emails with timestamps, her voice on video, and a lawyer who hadn't missed a single filing. She folded. She signed, and for the first time since I'd stepped off that plane from Prague, I exhaled. I drove to my parents' house alone. No court order, no reporter, no Marcus, just me and a manila envelope. My father opened the door. He looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I just stopped shrinking myself to fit their expectations. I handed him the envelope. He didn't ask what was inside. Behind him, my mother sat near the living room window, staring at the garden like it was talking to her. Her cardigan hung loosely from her shoulders. Her hands didn't move. I stepped inside just far enough to be heard. You don't need to choose sides anymore, I said. The truth already did that. My father flinched, but he didn't speak. That had always been his thing, staying quiet, avoiding the mess. But silence doesn't keep families whole. It just lets the loudest person win. I turned back toward the door, leaving the confession behind. The final nail in their illusion of innocence. The air outside was warm, not hot, just the kind of southern spring heat that made everything smell like grass and bark. As I walked down the driveway, I passed the patch of pavement I used to roller skate on. The slope I once skinned my knees down. The oak tree where we hung plastic Easter eggs on a string. I didn't cry. Not this time. My phone buzzed. It was Marcus. It's done, he said. The judge signed off. The property title is yours again. You're legally cleared. I smiled. Not wide, just enough to feel it. Thanks, I said. I'm emotionally clear, too. He didn't answer right away. Then you sure you're okay? I am not looking for revenge, Marcus, I said. I never was. Then what were you looking for? Closure, I said. And I earned every page of it. 2 weeks later, I packed up the last of my things and drove north to a place I didn't need permission to belong. The cabin was small, but the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt earned. A dirt road led to a clearing tucked between the trees just outside Boone. There were no neighbors in sight, no sounds but birds and the wind slipping through pine needles. It had taken 3 weeks of sorting, boxing, and signing releases to get here. But when I stepped out of the car, the weight I'd been carrying didn't follow. There were no long, resentful glances, No door locks changed without notice. No legal papers stuffed into drawers with my name erased. Just a rented cabin with one bedroom, a screened porch, and a welcome mat that didn't judge me for walking in alone. I brought one suitcase. That's all I needed. Inside, I placed a small photo on the nightstand. Me and my grandmother, covered in flour, laughing in her kitchen. Everything else, the past, the silence, the betrayal, I left behind. I opened a new bank account under my full name. No joint holders, no hidden access, no surprises. Later that night, my phone buzzed. Marcus, property fully restored. You're safe. And Lila's confession is archived under legal seal. I didn't reply right away. I stared out into the dark woods, then texted. I didn't want her punished. I wanted her stopped because there's a difference. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table and started writing, Dear Mom and Dad, I don't hate you. I just finally saw you for who you are when no one's watching. You protected the louder one. You excused her lies, and when it counted, you chose the easy silence over the hard truth. I'm not writing to change your mind. I'm not asking for apologies. I'm writing this because I need to leave something unsaid somewhere. Love doesn't always get an ending. Sometimes it just gets a drawer. I folded the letter carefully and slid it beside the bed. I never planned to mail it, but it felt better having it close. Not for them, but for me. Some wounds don't want apologies. They just want peace. Lila left Asheville quietly. Word spread from neighbors who never really liked her but always smiled anyway. Nathan lost his license. His name now lived in red ink on state registries. They were whispered about, not defended, not missed. I didn't celebrate, but I didn't mourn them either. Some truths take their time, but they always show up. You can't build your future on a grave you dug for someone else. Weeks passed. One morning, I opened the screen door and stepped onto the porch with my coffee. The sky was streaked with soft orange. The air held that kind of early mountain chill that cleared your thoughts. I didn't check the camera feed. It no longer existed. I didn't refresh the legal case folder. It had been archived. I just sat and breathed. I took a sip and said, not to anyone, but not exactly to no one either. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. They took the house. They took the name. They spun stories around the girl who wasn't there to fight back. But I came back, not for revenge, for resolution. And I got it. They used my absence to erase me, but I used their lies to rewrite myself. I didn't win by taking everything back. I won by taking back the only thing they never expected me to fight for, my peace. Sometimes the deepest betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people who share your name, your blood, your history. Eliza's story isn't just about inheritance or forged signatures. It's about reclaiming your voice when others try to silence it and finding peace not through revenge, but through truth. What would you have done in her place? Would you walk away quietly or fight to be heard? If you found this story powerful or it reminded you of someone in your life, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that reveal the raw, real, and sometimes ruthless sides of family. We've got more coming your way.